Good evening or good morning, depending on where you're coming from. My name is Tim Jones, and I am coming to you from Seattle in the United States of America. And welcome to another edition of Across the World. As always, I'm here with my very good friend, Hamad Hassan from Lahore, Pakistan. Good evening, Hamad.
Good morning, Tim.
And today we're going to introduce folks to a dear friend of mine named Steve Fisher. Steve and I have known each other since childhood, and Steve is an American who in 1991 moved to Prague in the Czech Republic. And so he's a person who's experienced about half his life in one culture and about half of his life in a very different culture. And we thought it would be fun today to learn a little bit about the culture of the Czech Republic, to some extent the culture of Europe, through the eyes of an American transplant. So Hamad, I would like to invite you to get started. And Steve, welcome to our program.
Thank you, thank you. And as you see on my Zoom screen, you can call me Step 000. I prefer.
It's just like a James Bond 007.
Thank you.
Exactly. I'm just a little less than him. So yes.
All right, Hamad. What would you like to learn about Steve and about his experiences?
As an American who moved to Europe in the early 1990s, so how difficult it was for you transition to a new culture? Because you know that the culture of Europe and the culture of America are somehow different. So initially, what you experienced about the new culture?
Well, first of all, I mean, I came because I heard that they were looking for volunteer English teachers in Czechoslovakia, in post-communist Czechoslovakia. And but the first actually I heard is that they were looking for English teachers in Prague. And I thought, oh, Prague, I've heard of Prague. That's a beautiful city. It's famous and it sounds very old and mysterious. And I've always been curious. And I met some people who told me that they had been there and I should really go and try it. And I was disillusioned with America at the time in '91 after the war in the Gulf of in the Persian Gulf, and with the politics in America and in the business world as well. I thought it was all pointless, and so I was looking to try something new. And going and volunteering to teach English in Prague sounded like a really interesting idea. And it was only later that I discovered that Prague was located in Czechoslovakia, and I was like, oh, really? Wow. All right. Wow, that's interesting. I was thinking maybe Germany or Austria somewhere, but okay. Czechoslovakia. Wow. At the time, the longest one-word named country in the world. That's
interesting. I did not know that.
Doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, beat out Liechtenstein. But, yeah. So, so I came here. I mean, I had $1,000 in my pocket and a telephone number for this school, this language school, which was organized by a Czech American association called Friends of the USA. And that was all I knew. I had 2 suitcases, a telephone number, and $1,000. I flew in, actually, I came through Italy, actually. I was visiting somebody in Italy, took the train into Prague, passed the border between Austria and Czechoslovakia, and it was still the old border. I mean, with like armed guards and dogs at the border of this, and like a metal fence.
Wow.
And going through in the station, and I was really like, whoa, okay.
What am I getting myself into?
You're right, really, but the first thing I noticed as we were crossing the border and getting into Czech Republic, I looked out the window and I was like, that's interesting. They have color here. Because all I had ever seen of Eastern Europe were black and white photos of Czech Republic, of Czechoslovakia, Poland, Russia. I'd only seen black and white pictures of people standing in line waiting for bread.
Right.
And I looked and it looked like Massachusetts. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So anyway, I mean, long story short, I got to Prague. I didn't know where I was going. People helped me. A police officer helped me to make a telephone call, which was on a payphone, which was not easy, as you would think maybe would be easy, but there was a trick to using a coin telephone. I called the girl I was supposed to meet. People directed me how to get there. I found her. I slept in her apartment on her sofa. I met some other teachers because there was a teacher meeting. And slowly, I mean, I next day, I think, I found a place to live with a Czech family. I rented a room in their apartment.
Wow.
They rented me their bedroom because it meant that they would get like $100 a month from me, which was good money for them. And they slept in their kitchen so that I could have their bedroom.
Wow.
They had one other room. They had one other room, but I think it was his mother who lived in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was living in their bedroom for $100 a month.
Wow.
Which seemed very cheap, except my salary from the school was no, it wasn't $100 a month. It was $30 a month.
Okay.
It was $30 a month. And my salary was $100 a month.
Wow. So,
So I went from making $1,000 a week in New York to making $100 a month in Prague.
Wow.
Plus they gave me a little money for food.
Amazing.
So,
wow.
But I mean, and it was scary. I was all alone. I didn't know anybody. I had left someone in New York that I was in love with, that I couldn't be with for various reasons. And I was heartbroken and I was alone. I didn't speak any of the language. Very few people spoke English in 1991 in Prague because they learned German or Russian was what they had studied.
Right.
And so I had a pocket dictionary where I would look up the words that I needed to buy milk or bread, and, everything was, at that point, everything was broken and old and run down and gray and grimy. And the city was not very tourist friendly, wasn't very visited by many people. And so there was still this very old, kind of mysterious, almost haunted quality to this city. Mm-hmm. And that was beautiful. It was almost like walking in the 13th, 14th century when you walked down the old streets. There was nobody, and in the fog. I came in September, end of September, beginning of October. The fog and the mist, and I started to make some friends with another American guy. I started to teach my classes, and the people were so welcoming. The Czechs were so thankful, and always the first question was, why did you come here? Why would you leave America and come here, And they were welcoming me into their homes. They were inviting me to come for dinner. They were inviting me for a walk, to take me around. They were, I started to teach privately in my home. People would come to me and we would just talk. And I would ask them about their lives, and they would tell me stories of what their experience was here and how bad it was, and how their families had been hurt. And, but they embraced me, and I became great friends with some of them. And it was beautiful. In addition to which, the other big thing was that I started to have these mystical experiences where these very strange coincidences that would happen to me every week. I would have a story to tell my students about some strange coincidence where I was walking downtown and I was thinking about somebody, and I would turn the corner and there that person was.
Interesting.
Or I was thinking about Albany. That's where Tim and I are from, in New York, in our hometown. I was thinking about my youth, and I turned the corner, and there was somebody from Albany in Prague. And we just, the chances of us meeting and being in the same place, they were there for a very short time, that I was in the same exact spot at the moment as they, and not necessarily in some main, like, historic place.
Right.
And I would just be like, wow, Or people, I would walk into a restaurant and there would be one of my students and he'd be laughing and I'd be like, hi, what's so funny? And he said, I was just telling my friends that I have this new English teacher who's really strange. And they asked me, how is he strange? He said, and then you walked into the restaurant just at that moment.
Isn't that something? Wow. That's
and then finally, I had at least one and a couple actually psychic dreams where telepathic, or where I dreamed something, and then what I dreamed happened.
Wow.
The next day or a day after, I had a vivid dream. I told a friend about it when we were walking. I went home, and what I dreamed happened.
That's so something.
I talked to a psychologist about it a year later when I had a radio show here, and I had a talk show, and I had a psychologist on from Charles University, and I talked to him about these experiences, and he said that when you leave a place where everything is familiar, and you go someplace where you know nothing, it liberates your right brain, which is your intuitive brain. We're always using our left brains. We're always normally using our left brains. I know this, I know this, I know that, I know that. When you go someplace where you know nothing, it liberates your right brain, which is your intuitive, your psychic, and that he said, and combined with the fact that Prague is famously a mystical city.
Yes.
So, Steve, what are some noticeable differences in living in Czech Republic as compared to how your life would be if you were still living in the United States?
Okay, well, I think you got a sense of it already when I said that I was making $100 a month. And that was, slowly, that standard of living here has gotten closer to the West. I would say, that it's still the case that incomes are lower in general here, probably significantly lower. Although I don't even know what incomes in America are anymore, But I was reading an interview in the Times today about some millennials who were just getting by on a 6-figure salary. There was like, yeah, maybe, but I don't know if we'll be able to buy a house. And I was like, okay, all right, okay. Anyway, but so some things are less expensive. My rent is quite cheap. Public transportation is cheap. Things like the entertainment, things that rely on people, are less expensive.
Would I be correct in assuming that a lot fewer people have, 2 cars in their home? They're more dependent on public transportation.
You would be surprised. In Prague, but I know, a lot of cars now. A lot of people have cars. A lot of people. You don't need one, in my opinion, in Prague. Public transportation is so great. But yeah, there's a lot of people with cars.
Okay.
And Czech people are very materialistic. I think they're very practical. They spend their money on fixing up their cottages, and that was a thing too, that people maybe don't necessarily own their homes, although a lot do now, and they're buying apartments. They're very practical. They're buying apartments. They're not renting. But a lot of people have cottages in the country that they'd gotten from their families.
Right, right.
You know, and they even had those during communism. Communism didn't mean that you couldn't own property.
Mm-hmm.
It only meant that you couldn't be a landlord.
Okay.
You couldn't own property for profit. But you could own an apartment. You could own a house. You could own a cottage.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Interesting.
so you just couldn't be a landlord. So yeah, a lot of people who own their cottages, and Czech people are very handy. They go to their cottages, they make them nicer, they fix the roofs, they tend their gardens.
I have a question. Do you, and I'm watching the clock, so I'll try to be quick on my question, but is there a subset of the population that misses life under communist rule and wishes it could go back?
Some of the seniors,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because they're on fixed incomes and they can't buy anything and the prices of everything have gone up.
Mm-hmm.
And the pensions haven't risen as fast as the cost of living. So yes, there are. You know, I'm not very many young communists anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But
So,
you know, getting back to the cost of things, food is quite expensive here.
Mm-hmm.
And clothes, shoes, it's all imported. You know, and we don't have the big box stores that you have in America. There's not a Walmart. We don't have the, you know, America is such a huge market that they can import massive amounts for very little. So you've got the power of, you know, in America, you've got the power of a large market to keep prices down for certain things.
Yeah. I got you.
But generally, I mean, I think I've been very lucky. I worked for some Western companies here.
Right.
So I was earning pretty good money.
Yeah.
And I spend very little. I live very humbly. I don't need very much, you know. So that's, to me, that's freedom.
There you go. There you go.
if we talk about the people like Pakistan, the Islamic religion is very much near to the cultures, and like in United States, Christian culture is very much dominant. I can say so. What religion important for the people of the Czech Republic in their lives?
No, I think it's considered the most agnostic country in the world. In fact,
least religious.
The least religious, because, and it's a few reasons. One was that this country was at war with the Catholic Church for a long time, with the Holy Roman Empire, because the Protestant leaders in the Czech Republic, you know, were heretics, were considered heretics by the Catholic Church. Right. And so there was a wars over that. And, one of the great Czech religious leaders, famous Jan Hus is his name, was taken to Germany and burned at the stake. And so, no, they didn't really like the Catholic Church very much. And then when the communists took over, they actually, even before that, really, in independent Czechoslovakia after the World War I in 1918, even the new Czech government, they thought they associated the church with the monarchy. They were the old powers, and they were driving them down. And then the communists, of course, were completely anti-religion.
Right.
So after 89, whereas in Poland, the Catholic Church was still a thing and it's still a very strong force, but here, not.
Interesting.
So there's very little religion here, although, there's still some religious holidays and
yeah. I have a question. One of the challenges that I certainly have read about, and I know you are very familiar with in Europe, is the whole concern about immigration. It's one of the reasons Great Britain broke away. Brexit happened in part because of the fears of immigration and how it might change the culture of the country. How big an issue is the refugee crisis and the mass immigration? How has that played out in the Czech Republic?
Basically like everywhere. I mean, the Czechs didn't have to worry about it because they stopped them at the border of Turkey. At the border of Turkey and Hungary,
Okay.
And the Syrians, when the Syrians were fleeing. But you can be sure know that the majority of Czechs did not want to have a large influx of refugees here from the Middle East. Now, interestingly, now that Ukraine has been invaded, and now that there are millions of refugees from the Ukraine, the Czechs have been very open to helping. They've provided housing and financial support and jobs and immigrant status and healthcare, and they've welcomed, and there's been tremendous outpouring of public contributions. So refugees are fine as long as they're white.
It's sad, but there is
Slavs in this case, also Slavs.
Yeah. As in the Slavic people.
Familiar. People are scared of what they don't know. It's like, and of course the politicians are, getting everybody crazy.
Right.
To whipping them up for their own power purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hamad, Hamad, I think we have time for one more question for Steve. What would you like to ask?
I want to ask that, are there any things which you miss about living in the United States other than friends?
Dick's fish fry. Dick's fish fry.
It might have been something cultural, but now with the internet, I mean, I have all the entertainment and culture that I need. I do miss clam chowder. I miss fried clams.
Yeah.
I miss the cheeseburgers at Ted's Fish Fry in Latham, New York. Shout out to Ted's.
It's one of his favorite restaurants. Very casual. Oh, that's funny.
And their onion rings too.
Yeah.
There's some American cuisine. I miss some American. Believe it or not, there is American cuisine, but other than that, and friends and family, no.
Yeah.
I really don't miss anything.
Yeah. Well, Steve. Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I just wanted to say, I don't have any. There's no sea here. We're a landlocked country. Yeah. And I lived a lot by the sea in my life when I was in America. So, but if I want to go to the sea, last couple of weeks ago, I just flew to Italy for the weekend.
Yeah.
And we were right at the coast, and it was lovely. And we breathed in the sea. We had some seafood, and then we came back here.
Yeah. Well, excellent. Steve, this has been fascinating. And Hamad, thank you for your excellent questions. We only have just exactly 1 minute left before we wrap up. But I want to say, Steve, having known you and sort of vicariously followed your journey over the many years, I marvel at the willingness to take the kind of personal risk that you took to dive into a world so alien from the world you knew, in a language that is very hard for Americans to master. The Czech language is not an easy language for Westerners, for Americans to learn.
I meant to talk about that, but I didn't get a chance to talk about the fact that, for example, there are 5 different words for woman. 5 different ways to say woman, I should say. 7.
Wow.
7. Because there are 7 cases for all nouns.
Wow.
And 7 cases for all adjectives.
Wow.
So
I could never imagine. Well, we're out of time, and I just want to thank our very special guest from Prague in the Czech Republic, Steve Fisher. What an incredible journey it's been, and I've really, I've known you throughout the years that you made this transition, and I have to say, what courage it must have required to just give up the life and the security and the stability that you knew to enter into a totally different culture in a language that for Americans is one of the hardest languages possible to learn. It is a very difficult language. Steve, I seem to recall once that you had said something about there's many different words for sometimes the same thing. Can you tell me about that?
Many different words for the same thing. You mean like the Eskimos with snow? Not exactly.
Well,
however, there are different declensions for nouns and adjectives. So, and worse than Latin, I know you took Latin, or if you speak German, you're familiar with the fact that but in Latin and in German, there are only 6 declensions. Mm-hmm. In Czech, there are 7.
Wow.
The nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, vocative, locative, and instrumental. So wow. depending on how the noun is being used in the sentence, for example, the noun for woman, it can be Jena, Jenny, Genia, Genu, Geno, Genia, or Geno.
I did not know that. Wow.
Is that's just one woman.
Oh, wow. Is there anything like that, by the way, in Urdu where, there's many different declensions or variations of the same word, the way Steve's describing in the Czech language?
Yes, a lot of things. Like a word here in Pakistan, you know that one word is which means that you may prosper in English. In Urdu we say it Zindabad, and in Sindhi language here we say khappe. So when we come to the Punjabi, the khappe language means the opposite to maybe you prosper, means that maybe you do not prosper.
So, wow, just the opposite.
So,
how many languages do you speak, by the way, Hamad? How many languages?
My mother language is Urdu. I live in the province Punjab, so Punjabi is a very dominant language here. So okay. I also speak Punjabi, and
English.
My schooling was in English, so I can also speak and write and read English. I know about the Arabic. So the main Urdu, Punjabi, and English I know well.
Well, the only language I speak is English, and some people would say that I'm almost fluent in it, unless you ask my wife, then she would not say that. Well, listen.
I want to make one observation about Hamad, and that is, you're a good-looking guy.
Yeah, he knows.
And in this life, you can know a lot of languages, you can have a lot of smarts, you can be the nicest person in the world, but most important is you're a handsome person, and you're going to do well in your life.
I know.
Thank you,
guy.
I told him the same thing. I said, it really annoys me. Once a week, I have to go look at this young, handsome man to remind me of just how old and flabby I am. So it's really kind of getting on my nerves.
Anyway, well done, you.
Well,
can you guess any young men have some old friends like me?
Any young men? Wow, that's amazing that he knew that. Any event, I am going to wrap it up. And thank you all for watching, and we'll be back again soon with another edition of Across the World. Goodbye, everybody.